Goedenavond allemaal, welkom bij de 43ste en beste aflevering van de Hashcast. En als altijd heb ik een gast veel cooler en veel interessanter dan mijzelf. En vandaag is dat zeker waar, de helft van Vlambeer, Rami Ismail. Hoe is het, Rami?
Ja, het is een gangetje.
Het is een gangetje? Dat is mooi.
Het is laat.
Ja, het is laat. Het is 3 uur 's nachts bij jou.
Yeah.
Now, before I lose both my viewers, we're gonna do the thing where switch back to English. But just so you know, we
Sure.
could easily do this all in Dutch because
Yeah.
we're both Dutch. I'm no longer a Dutch. I'm still a Dutch citizen, I guess, but no longer living in the Holland. And you barely live in the Netherlands, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fair. I spend most of my days traveling the world. I'm like in the Netherlands like 30 to 60 days a year. But I like most of those days.
Yeah,
so it's
yeah. If you get, it's the Dutch have some nice summers when you're lucky. Both days.
We do. Mild winters.
Yes. Oh man, don't get me started on winter here in Canada. Well, you mentioned before we started recording, you just got back from Montreal, so you've seen the worst of it, probably.
Whew. Yeah, and I was in Toronto during that week where Chicago froze over, that was bad. It's. I don't know. I always wonder, like, what happened that made people settle a city there? Like, did they get there in summer and they were just like, oh, this is nice.
Great,
And then winter came around, they're like, oh, we built our houses. We're just going to stay.
Yeah, might as well. My wife always made fun of me because when I just moved to Canada and the first time there was a lot of snow, I was like looking at out of the window like, oh my God, look at the snow. It's magical. And now I'm like 10 years in. I'm like, fuck this snow. I can't stand it.
Please make it go away.
Make it go away. Give me the wet Dutch summers. But yeah, before we digress too much into the weather podcast, I can read up on you on all the things you've done, but I always assume that my mom's listening to this. So for a quick introduction, like, who is Rami and what is it that you do?
So my name is Rami Ismail. I'm one half of a Dutch independent game studio named Vlambeer. We are the creators of small arcade games that are interesting twists on things you might have played before. Most of our famous work has titles such as Super Crate Box, Ridiculous Fishing, Lufttrousers, and Nuclear Throne. I started the studio back in 2010 with a fellow student back in the days named JW, or Jan Willem. We both dropped out of university together, and we didn't really like each other, so we were going to make one game together, and we're almost a decade later, and we've made almost 20 games.
Yeah.
We've won tons of awards, released commercially successful hits, done a lot of work for the community, created a lot of free tools, and we've been supporting the independent / artistic game development scene for the past 9 years now. I spent most of my days traveling around the world, trying to see if I can help game development start or establish in countries where most people don't think, in countries that most people don't think of when they think about game development. So a lot of my work is focused on South America, Africa, and Asia, where I try and support local communities of developers to have to get connected in the games industry, which is still sadly still very Western focused. So it's my hope to democratize that and make game development accessible for everybody.
Yeah, well, that's what makes you such an interesting fellow to me, because like I've seen all your work in that area almost before I connected the dots from your games to everything else that you've been doing. One thing I want to focus in on right away. You said you dropped out of university and then started making games. That was a game development course?
Yeah, it was a game development course. Yeah, it was the game design and development course at the Utrecht School of Art and Technology.
Okay. So out of all your classmates, like that I probably never heard of, or maybe I have, do they like hate you a little bit that the dropout became as successful as you are right now, or is it all still very good relationships?
I think, I mean, it's one of those things where because we dropped out in the second year, we kind of drifted apart from most of our fellow developers. I know a lot of them have gone on to have successful or happy careers in the games industry. Many of them have left the games industry because it is a very competitive industry and not necessarily one where everybody who graduates gets, a job.
Yeah.
As far as I know, I don't think a lot of people, are resentful. I think a lot of people realized the gamble we were taking, and understood that there was no guarantee that what we did was going to work out, especially not, considering we didn't like each other. So I think a lot of them are just happy for us that things worked out.
Yeah, well, that's good.
And I think a lot of them also appreciate the work we do for the games industry at large. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of them are just happy that a story like this could come from their year.
Yeah,
and that's that's awesome, especially considering a lot of the quite a few of the developers in that year ended up doing cool stuff, whether it's in games or elsewhere.
Well, that's good, because the Dutch are notoriously resentful. I mean, even if you just look at soccer, like 1974, people are still not over that.
Yeah, I think it's also just sort of like a Dutch cultural thing is the understanding that there's a saying in the Netherlands, right, that you obviously know, doe maar normaal, dan doe je nog gek genoeg, which vaguely translates to if you act normal, you're acting crazy enough. Mm-hmm. The Dutch are very much a country with tall poppy syndrome. Like, mm-hmm. You're not supposed to stick your head out above the grass.
Yeah.
But don't stand out. Try to fit in. Be humble. Don't be prideful. Don't talk about your achievements. Mm-hmm. Talk about the way you're normal and like everybody else. And I was fortunate enough that I am Dutch Egyptian. Mm-hmm. The Egyptians are the full opposite. Like, you just boast about everything. If you do a good thing, talk about it. Like, so that was very helpful, is because the industry is notoriously American, mm-hmm. and the Americans are very much an exceptionalist country, mm-hmm. Where they believe that anything that you do is to be presented as exceptional. Yeah. Right? You get a good grade, it's like exceptional. You get a 16. Exceptional, right? Like, it's all exceptional, and people are taught to hyperbolize and to not exaggerate, but to emphasize their achievements, mm-hmm. which is just not a very Dutch thing. No. Like, you go to school and you do the thing, cool. So does everybody else. Yeah. Like, you get a job and it goes well. School, that's normal. Like, what did you have for dinner? Well, I had a mash, like a traditional Dutch mash. It's like, oh, cool. Yeah. How's the weather? The weather is good. Yeah. Right? Like, we're not a country that likes to boast. And while that has, it has roots in ideas of equality and fairness and making sure that everybody, gets to feel like a full part of society, and everybody feels like everybody can live with dignity and respect, it has some downsides as well, mm-hmm. in that it's hard to do something remarkable in the Netherlands. Yeah, it's just not appreciated.
And we also have sayings for literally every situation. It's like, my wife's Canadian. She always cracks her up when there's a situation like, actually, the Dutch have a saying about that. She's like, of course.
It usually involves wind as well.
Yeah. No, it's.
I don't know why it's always wind, but it's always wind.
It is, yeah. Well, that's what we're known for, I guess. Wind and high water. Did that? You also mentioned, like, you went into business with a guy you didn't really like. Was that just purely based on complementing skills, or why that?
Oh, no. Gosh, no. So what happened is, I've been developing games unsuccessfully, mm-hmm. since I was 6 years old, right? I started making games when I was just a kid. We got our first computer at home, and it was one of those MS-DOS computers, you had to, like, type everything. I didn't speak English, so I didn't know anything of what was on the screen, but I knew that if I typed the exact words QBasic, and then went to file open, which is the same word in Dutch, and then gorillas, which is the same word in Dutch, mm-hmm. That there would be a game where you were two gorillas that threw bananas at each other. Yeah. And it was a 2-player game, and you would type the angle and the velocity, and it was like that tanks game, right? Yeah. But instead of tanks, it was gorillas on skyscrapers. Yeah. And to load that game, I had to load the code and then execute the code, which I didn't realize back then. But then I started, modifying. I started modifying the code a bit, not knowing any English, and I replaced the main menu with my name. Yeah. And then the next time I ran the game, instead it just showed my name. And from that point on, like, that's just what I've been doing all my life, right? Like, I'm just changing words until games happen. Yeah. And then I started writing words until games happen, and then I started, doing the business and all that other stuff for games as well. But at the core of me is a kid that just likes that when he types words, games happen.
Yeah.
Right? JW has been making games since he was 13 or 14 years old. He got back in the days you could buy like magazines for like computer games.
Yeah.
And one of those magazines came with a copy of something called Game Maker, which is a very simple, child-friendly programming tool to help kids learn games programming. It's actually made by used to be made by a Dutch professor, Mark Overmars, who
not the soccer player.
Not the soccer player, no. But he wanted to make a tool that was a good introduction to game development, right? And JW played with that, and there was like a car racing game. And from what he told me, he replaced a klaxon sound with the sound of a cow.
Yeah.
So when you honk the klaxon, instead of going like, it went like, and he thought that was so funny that he never stopped making video games either. So at some point, both of us went to university, and the first year was awesome. Like, it was super great. Like, we both are very different. Like, I'm a programmer at heart. Like, I like code, I like structure, I like the logic of computers, I like figuring out how you translate like the sort of like fuzzy brain logic that's in our head into like the very binary, like cold logic of computer. JW is a designer. So he likes coming up with ideas and like translating ideas into barely workable, but executing code.
Yeah.
So both of us went to the university, and the first year was awesome because it taught us all these perspectives that we've never had, right? We had to learn how to draw better. We had to learn art history. We had to learn code. We learned collaboration because both of us were like solo developers or like small team developers. We learned like context of development, like in what context does development happen. It was great. Like, we learned so much, and it was just an incredible year. And then the second year came around, and it was just kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
And JW and I got very tired of that.
Yeah.
So I've always been a bit of an organizer. So I decided to get together like a whole bunch of the best students, and then we're just going to make a commercial game.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, this project was doomed, right? like in hindsight, a terrible idea. I got like almost 15 developers together, which is way too big.
Yeah.
Started on a game for Xbox Live Arcade, which was sort of like the big thing on Xbox 360. And started on this game. And surprisingly, through a matter of bluster and bluff, got it into the greenlight process at Microsoft, which meant that this game, made by a bunch of students, could now launch on the same platform as Super Meat Boy and Braid, and in the future maybe a game like Fez. Like these big impossible titles that you, as a student, you don't think that you can do that.
No.
And here we were. And then the school had a problem because I selected those students for being the best, right? Not just from my year, but also from the third year and the fourth year.
Yeah.
And it turns out the school needs those students to do projects. It's actually kind of a important thing that they have those projects, because that's how the school gets their sort of legitimacy in the industry. So suddenly all their best students working on this like weird student project was bad. So they decided to shut it down.
Yeah.
And fair enough. They found a clause in the student contract that said that anything you make at school is owned by school. Yeah. And technically it's a legal defense for students doing bad business.
Yeah.
But they clearly used it as an override.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what, I'm done. Yeah. Like, if this is how school wants to do it, like, we have an opportunity to launch a commercial game in the second year of our university. that will put us ahead of so many others.
Yeah.
But instead they said no, so I decided to leave.
Yeah.
And then there was only one other person who was on that project, kind of resentfully, but hey, all his friends were in on it as well. And he decided to drop out as well. And that was JW.
Okay.
So really the reason we're working together has nothing to do with like complementary skills or anything. It's just we were the two people dropping out.
Okay.
And then it turned out we have complementary skills.
Well, that's. I always love origin stories because, about anything, because it's often such a small window or a small opportunity that just snowballs into things. Because now here you are, you've accomplished this much. What was the step after that? Like, because I can imagine, like, you lost that project completely, or did you?
Yeah, okay. Project was done.
Okay.
We tried to salvage it, but it was. All the other students had to go to the projects.
Yeah.
They had to do the school project, so they didn't have time, and then internships, and then. So the next thing I remember is me and JW walking through Amsterdam South on the way to meet with an artist that was going to work with us on a little prototype called Crates from Hell. Mm-hmm. And we were going to meet with him and just talk to him because we didn't have any money. We didn't have any, we had a game that we were going to make that we were hopefully going to launch on Xbox because, we now had those contacts.
Yeah.
And I remember us just sort of discussing while we were walking, kind of vividly remember being at a traffic light, a pedestrian crossing. And just kind of like discussing what the structure of this company was going to be. Mm-hmm. So I was going to be in charge of business and programming, and he was going to be in charge of design and prototyping. I was going to handle the teams and legal. He was going to handle the tone and like direction, and I would be responsible for all the things I'm responsible for, and he would be responsible for all the things he's responsible for. And we were just two people, so we needed veto power. Yeah. So I would get veto power over all my things, and he would get veto power over all his things. I think that was before the name Vlambeer was locked down. Mm-hmm. That was also ridiculous because we'd been searching for a name for this company for weeks, maybe months, and we didn't want something with games, we didn't want something with soft, we wanted something that was like one word that was like punchy and weird, but also like could be pronounced by English people.
Yeah, because you pronounce it almost English now. Was it always from the start, or was it Vlambeer and then it became Vlambeer?
It was Vlambeer, and then it became Vlambeer. Vlambeer originally started because it was a very bad pun on the Dutch word flamberen.
Okay, I just make that connection.
It means to flambe, and if you would write that in Dutch, you would write flambeer, which is flambe with an F.
Yeah.
If you change the F to a V, you get a really strange thing where effectively you're writing flame bear, which is a bear on fire, and flambe is put food on fire. And JW brought to me this really bad drawing of a bear on fire, and I'm just like, that seems bad. And he had drawn a smiley face on it because the bear wasn't in pain; it was just on fire. And I'm like,
it's a natural state being on fire. Yeah,
it does sound kind of cool. And then we realized that Vlambeer is really easily pronounceable. Then we just took the bear, and JW drew it in MS Paint in like 30 seconds. And to this day, that MS Paint drawing is our logo. So
that is pretty. I can't believe I never made it connection with Vlambeer. Fair enough. People might have no idea. Like if you don't have the Dutch ear, you probably still don't get it. But
a lot of people don't realize it's a bear.
Yeah, I had to double check it when I was like photoshopping, and it was like, oh yeah, you clearly see it when you work with it, but otherwise you only see the flame, right? It's like the FedEx logo all over again. But so like you make your game, you make your first successful game, several now, but then you decide to be more than that. because like I said, I first knew you from everything else that you did. Like, at what point are you comfortable enough in your career to start moving beyond that? Because I can imagine there's a lot of people who are developers that are just just heads down, pushing games. Like, what was the drive for you to go beyond that?
Well, there's two parts of it. Like, first is my history, and second is, again, like, just a weird origin story. My background is I'm Dutch Egyptian, right? I was born in the Netherlands, but I always grew up between two cultures. And my dad is very Egyptian, and my mom is very Dutch. Yeah. And in my life, that always meant that my dad was sort of like strict, felt conservative, was religious, and my mom was always caring and supportive and open-minded. And they're both incredible. Like, I'm very thankful for both my parents because they gave me two very different perspectives. But most importantly, I think growing up biculturally means that a lot of things that seem absolute to a lot of people seem relative to me. Yeah. Right. So the news sounds factual. Yeah. But there's also two perspectives to many stories. Yeah. Global politics sound objective. But from other countries, the same power dynamics might look less favorable. The parts of history that we get taught, the music that we like, the time scale of music, the television series, accents, understanding of politics, like, everything changes when I would fly to Egypt, and everything would change back when I flew to the Netherlands. And, That has always been sort of an integral part of my being, and my understanding is that different places are different, which sounds very logical, right? Yeah. So when I started Vlambeer, one of our first challenges was that we were getting attention from the Dutch press, which is awesome. But the largest newspaper in the Netherlands at the time, which I think was like the Volkskrant, was had like a reach of like 1 million people. Yeah. Right. Which meant that if we got our game in the newspaper, even in the best circumstances, we had a reach of 1 million people, of which, say, 20% play video games, of which 5% liked indie games, of which 1% liked arcade indie games. Yeah. Then we're left with 2,000 people, right? So we needed to reach the English-speaking press, but really the only way any person was going to care about us was if we went and talked to them. So I decided to try something that I'd been doing before in my high school, which is I was going to try public speaking. Yeah. So I went and spoke at a bunch of events in Amsterdam and caught the attention of an event organizer in London, who then decided to fly me out to London so I could do a talk there and talk to the press. Yeah. So it was a mess, right? Like, I had no money. We were both university dropouts, so it was all flying by the seat of my pants. I didn't have places to stay for like 2 of the 4 nights I was going to be there. So I met other indie developers and then crashed on their couch when I explained the story to them. Yeah. A lot of people helped us out back then. Yeah. But my talk was received very well, and before we knew it, we were being invited to other talks. And then at the same time, Super Crate Box, which is the game that Crates from Hell, that prototype that brought us to South Amsterdam. Yeah. Super Crate Box got nominated for the Independent Games Festival Awards, which is sort of like the biggest award in independent gaming. Yeah. It's sort of like the yearly, like, Oscars is a big word, but these were like the big deal, right? This was it. We got nominated for that. So before we knew it, we were flying to San Francisco and for those awards. So all at the same time, my public speaking profile was rising, and our profile as a studio was rising. And we'd always kind of set up Vlambeer as a third person. Yeah. So me and JW would both had our fans, both had our friends, both had our families, and the people that followed us, like hundreds of people on Twitter, huge Twitter accounts. Yeah. And then what we would do is we would take Vlambeer, and both of us would tell everybody to go follow Vlambeer. Yeah. And then Vlambeer would grow bigger than us, which means we would reach more people, and then we would try and get those people to follow me and JW
Yeah.
again. And then we would try and like keep that back and forth going. And that's kind of what happened in real life as well.
Yeah.
But the kind of idea that we had was that it would be like a minecart, right? Like we push it, it starts rolling down, we run after it, and then at the bottom we hop in and then have enough momentum to go like very high again. But what actually happened is we pushed the minecart and we're still running after it, right? Like this thing is still going. Like it's ridiculous how out of hand a lot of these small ideas got.
Yeah.
So my public speaking profile kept rising, and before I knew it, I was flying around the world, but like mostly the UK and America, because those events could pay for it.
Yeah.
Right. And then I started getting these emails. Right. I started getting these emails from like Brazil and like Uruguay and Jordan and Indonesia and India of like, do you want to come speak here? Because we heard your talks are good. And they would be very helpful to the developers here. And I would always be like, yeah, if you can pay for the flight, and find me a hotel, then yeah, absolutely. Like I don't need a speaker fee. Like don't care about all that. Like if you have a cool community, I want to meet them. Right. And then they would always say, well, we don't have money. Yeah. So it never happened. Yeah. And then in 2013, we launched a game called Ridiculous Fishing. Yeah. And it's a long story that you can look up on the internet, but it was a rough development. And when the game came out, from one night to the next morning, we were, I don't want to say like rich, but we were wealthy. Yeah. Right. So I went to JW and I just basically said like, hey, can I take some of this money and go visit all of these places that have been emailing me? And JW said, sure. Like if that's what else are we making money for? Yeah. If it's not to help people, right? And to give back to this community. So JW gave me permission to use some of Vlambeer's funds to do that, and I just went to every place. Right, I went to all of them, and it was such an inspiring trip. Right, like I went all over the world, and I met all these developers, and they're all working from conditions that are way harder than mine. Yeah. Because if I wanted to go to England, it's like if I go from here to the airport, it's 20 minutes by train, and from the airport to London is a 50-minute flight. That is like
it's ridiculous.
$40, like $60, with like a cheap budget airline. If you want to do that from like Uruguay, like it's not, it ain't happening. No. That's not a thing. Like getting to the nearest like primarily English-speaking country with like a games press and a structure and a history around that is the US, and that's thousands of dollars and a visa and like all that you have to arrange. There's all that. Yeah. And I was like, all these people are making games in circumstances that are so much more difficult, but also the games they're making are so different. Yeah. Right. There's a lot of like trying to be like the Western market, but then you would come across this game with like local music, right? Or like different hero stories, or like a different perspective on a thing that we've seen in games a million times. And I was just, it gave me such hope for the potential of games, right? To not see the same story over and over. And I started realizing that that's what's been happening, right? Like I played these games, and every time it's me and people that look like my Dutch friends shooting me and people that look like my Arab friends. And why is that always the same story? And why are we always shooting? And like, I love shooting because Vlambeer makes shooting games. But it seemed so strange to me that a medium with the history of like adventure and games in like all directions, all these weird MS-DOS games that I was playing as a kid, that it now sort of like consolidated into shooters and RPGs, and like sports. And I was like, where's the rest? Yeah, right. And it turns out it's everywhere. It's just harder to find. Yeah. So that's kind of how that happened. It started by accident. Yeah. And then it just never stopped. Yeah.
I love that story. But I have seen a talk about you, like basically saying like you don't stand a chance, because you can't just replicate your success, right? It's you kind of have to have that jump off point where it just works. Yeah. So I think when people have access to someone like you, at least their change might improve over there? Do you feel like you had a positive impact in what those communities are now doing, or and I'll ask your Egyptian side on this too, to both about this if you want to.
So let's put it this way. These strips have been as educational for me as I might have been educational to them, right? A lot of the knowledge I have that is helpful to communities that are emergent territories is actually knowledge that I got from territories that are emergent, because often their circumstances are very similar. And I started sort of creating like structures of thinking about this, stages of community development. I started developing tools to help with that. I started like creating talks that focus specifically on specific issues or like talking points. I started to learn how to work with governments. I started to learn how to work with like local press. I started to learn how to like talk about with investors, talk with funds, talk with larger companies, just so I could help those local communities, and I would learn from them and then take that knowledge elsewhere to help there. And that way, you know, I could not only give back to the community, but also give knowledge from one community to another and connect them. From what I understand, it's been very helpful.
Yeah.
I've been to a number of countries that have structuralized their development community so that, you know, they now have their own games association, or helped developers go to GDC and then bring back knowledge from GDC to their communities. Made contacts, created networks, introduced people to press, like, you know, like just helped where I can. I like to think that it's helpful. If it wasn't, I wouldn't be doing it, obviously. But I think mostly what's important to me is all I do really is I try to undo the disadvantages certain communities have opposed to the places we normally think of. So I'm not really helping as much as making things fair again. And it's very important to me that that's what I do, right? Like I'm trying to make things fair. And doing that often requires figuring out what's unfair in specific places first. And it can be anything, right? It can be economical, it can be historical, it can be political, it can be language. It can be many things. And trying to figure that out is always just sort of a fascinating little puzzle. And it's a puzzle you can only solve with the people there, right? So I'm more of a resource than a helper. Like I'm a utility, right? Like I'm very okay with that. Like it took me a while to come to terms with the fact that I'm not technically, I mean, I am a person, but my role in this industry is a utility. Like I'm a resource, and if I can help, then absolutely. Like I love all the stuff coming out of these territories.
That was going to be my next question. If you can, there's probably too many to name, but if you can pick one thing that you saw grow out of these communities that might have not been possible before, a project or a game, like is there anything we should be looking out for?
I mean, there's so many. Like I think the most important thing is that you look out for games that are from different places, right? Games like Malacca, games like This War of Mine, games like She, games like Farsh. Like there's tons of games that have different cultural, historical backgrounds that are very good games, but be very different games just by grace of being from a different place. So if you have an American war game, it will always be about shooting and winning. Because that's just the American mindset. Wars, we go and fight them, we win them, right? While This War of Mine is from a Polish studio, and that's a country where traditionally war has happened to them. So their attitude towards war is very different. And the same way you will see a lot of American strategy games be about weapons of mass destruction, you won't find a Japanese strategy game that's focused around weapons of mass destruction because they have a rather large cultural stigma and trauma with regards to this. So just by grace of that, you see different mechanics that you've never seen before, and different stories and different attitudes. And looking for those games is honestly very worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's just,
what is the trick to finding those games? Because even me, I'm pretty plugged in, but I often only see the ones that pop up, right? The big ones. Like, what if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I never knew these games even existed? Like, what is the trick to find them? Because I know with all the stores now, it can be pretty difficult.
It can be very difficult. I think following specialized blogs tends to help a lot, especially if you're on PC, which is where most of games like that come out. Websites like Rock Paper Shotgun and industry games news websites like the worst gaming website name in the history of games website, Gamasutra, with a G. Those websites very frequently have blogs or information on games from different territories. So there is places to find them. Alternatively, Twitter is a really good one. There tends to be hashtags and discussions that focus specifically on game developers from everywhere. So, I mean, I wouldn't recommend making that your entire video games diet, right? There's a lot of games to play, from like huge AAA experiences that are just incredible all the way down to like small experimental games. But I always feel that contrast helps. So playing one and then the other is actually really helpful. It's the same way that after playing like a super Japanese RPG, I always feel like playing an American shooter. Right? Like it's just the contrast. For me, that helps.
Oh, that's good. That's good now, because I feel like I discovered Celeste or discovered Gris. Well, like everybody's playing it nowadays, but
I mean, think of Gris. Gris is from Spain. A lot of people are not aware, but that's actually from a territory in which game development is not as established as you might think it is. And I think one of the reasons that game is so low on text is because the team there just isn't very good at English speaking. So they just left it without words, right? Like Gris is beautiful, gorgeous.
I wonder. I know everybody mispronounces it, because is it Gris in Spanish? I don't know. My Spanish is not super good.
I think it's Gris, but I haven't gotten like the final say on it. No, so I call it Gris, but Gris. It's easier to spell.
Yeah, that's true. But I do like to like extend my library every now and then, because it's easy to go into the whatever pops up, because a game is only a big game for a week nowadays. So it's easy to lose track of that.
It's either that or it's the game for a year, right? Like we're in a weird time where people are playing less games for a longer time, which is a really strange development. But it also like explains why everybody's switching to free to play and microtransactions.
People are only going to be now this week, so.
Yeah, I mean it's a good week.
Yeah, it is.
I really like that game.
Yeah, I'm still playing Destiny 2 for like the last 4 months. But I want to talk like a nice segue into something you said earlier. Like you want to make everything more fair and make things more accessible. And you're kind of, well, not you and your team, I guess, are hosting a big conference coming up. Online only. Is that what I understand from this?
Yeah, it's an online-only games conference.
Yeah, so I know your stories. I follow your Twitter, and I know I joke with you every now and then that you always get randomly selected for all kinds of stuff at the airport. What was your driver behind that? Because you do so many things. I'm very curious about the drivers behind all these projects for you. That you're like, okay, fuck this, I'm gonna make this accessible for really everybody, and it seems to pay off.
That's usually the idea. Usually the idea is it's like, so for a lot of things, I tend to help people, right? So I used to help a lot of people with writing press posts. And then eventually I realized that I can just make a tool for that. Because I'm a programmer. So I made something called Do Press Kit, which is a free tool that indies can use. Not only does it help them helps them make a press kit, it also helps them think about how to structure it, and it kind of forces them to create screenshots and write a small like blurb and a small description of the game. And this conference, it's called GameDev.world, is the same thing. So I've been traveling around the world and like connecting people and like trying to tell people the story of game development elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I realized that if something happens to me, or I get tired, or I can't do this anymore, or for whatever reason my life changes, then that knowledge and network is just kind of gone.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of people in the industry that do what I do, right? It's very expensive, which you can only do if you're either a very, like a very wanted speaker, because then you get paid for the talks in the West, and you can use that money to go to other places. And I have a studio backing me.
Yeah.
So A, you need to be, you need to have access to the resources, and B, you need to have the network to do it, which there's not a lot of people who have that specific combination of circumstances. But that means that if I stop, then it just
gone.
It stops.
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to find a way to make that a structure, just like with Prescott. I wanted to find a way to not require me.
Yeah.
And GameDev.world is sort of the answer to that. So it's an online live-streamed free games conference. It's not like the Game Awards. So we're not like doing big awards and showcasing big games. No, this is like an industry insider event. It's talking about game development, talking about how games are made, why games are made, decisions. It's in 8 languages. So talks will be in English, but also Spanish, Brazilian Portuguese, French, Russian, Arabic, simplified Chinese, and Japanese.
Yeah.
And then all those talks are going to be translated live to all of those 8 languages.
Okay.
That makes it the first ever global games conference. There's never been a conference that has been that accessible. It's accessible for almost 70% of the world's population that speak at least one of these languages. And my hope is that it introduces people to each other across the language barrier, right? So that even if they might not be able to communicate perfectly, they still see that there's people out there that make games just like they do, right? Because game development is kind of the same everywhere.
Yeah.
Like the priorities we have are very different, but game development itself is very similar. We still type words into a programming IDE, and then that compiles to a game, and so we have a lot to talk about. We just might not be able to talk, right? And I want to show that, and I want me to not be necessary for that anymore. Because I'm going to keep doing this as long as I can, but I don't know how long that is.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that before the moment comes where I realize I can't do this anymore, or before the moment comes where I can't do it anymore, that there is something that can do it for me. Yeah. So,
what's the entry level for a conference like that? Like, I have spent 40 hours trying to make a character jump, like a pre-made character, because I was trying to get my feet wet into game development. Someone like me, or someone who's slightly beyond that, I think that they actually are trying to struggle this. Is that, can they just log in and get the views? Okay.
Yeah, no. So I mean, obviously there will be talks that will be more entry level, and there's talks that will be more expert level. The main thing is, if you're interested at all in game development, or you want to know about the stories of how games get made, this conference does that. Yeah. Right. The point of this conference is to not only teach people that are new to the industry, but also show people that are veterans what different perspectives for the same problem are. Right. So it should generally be very accessible. And if you've never made a game before, but you just like video games, you might actually like enjoy it a lot as well.
Yeah, because I think that is another. I'm like giving you a new idea here, but like people seem to not always fully understand what it takes to create a game. Like, is it like from a side angle? Is there something there to finally show people like, okay, you might have no idea what it works, but just log into this and educate yourself.
Let's put it this way. With all respect, most people have no idea what game development is, right? It's something that we've sort of messed up as a games industry. Is we've created this idea that there is a way that is good to make a video game. And we've convinced people that we know what that is. Well, the actual truth of game development is that nobody knows what the hell they're doing, right? Computers are hard, teams are hard, people are hard, art is hard. getting all of that to work together on a schedule with a budget in an economy that is ever changing is ridiculous. And a lot of people think of game development as sort of like a linear thing. Like you start with an idea and then you just do the idea.
Yeah.
And then the idea is good and you got money from magic. Yeah. And then the game releases, and now you need to update it all the time.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of things that people think about the game development that just aren't true.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people think that games are fair.
Yeah.
Or that we're honest. And we're not. We lie to gamers all the time. Like it's our job, right? Like our job is to make you believe that these things are true.
Yeah.
Or really they're polygons and numbers.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that means that like if you're playing a game where you have like say here's a common trick in the games industry. Say you have a boss fight, right? And the boss fight has a 10% chance to drop this very cool piece of loot.
Yeah.
Now, how often do you need to defeat the boss to get that loot?
Well, depends. Like 10% every time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like you have to do it 10 times and then you have exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is the thing that most people in their brain get wrong.
Yeah.
And it's not that we don't know, because you and I both know, and I'm guessing some of the listeners might have guessed this right. Some of the listeners might have thought 10%. Our brain wants it to be 10.
Yeah.
Even though we know that it might be more, right? We know we might have to try 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So what a lot of games do is they kind of put in like a pity counter.
Yeah.
So if there's like a boss fight with a very special drop, we'll just set a timer. And if you've done it 20, 30 times, we'll just give you the item. Is that fair? No.
Yeah.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Like the fair thing is it's a 10% chance, so it should be a 10% chance every time.
Yeah.
We do millions of things like that. The first bullet that gets shot at you from off screen always misses.
Yeah.
Right? So that you can see the bullet fly, which is cooler than seeing the damage like indicator. Right? So you still have time to respond. If you have a health bar in a lot of games, the last 10% of your health bar actually represents 20% of your health.
Yeah.
So it seems like you have more close misses.
Yeah.
In FIFA, the goalie will be less accurate in the last like 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
So there's more last minute goals.
Yeah.
We lie all the time. It's not our job to be fair or honest or anything. It's our job to make you have an engaging, interesting experience. That's just like, these are sort of like understood, well-known ideas in the games industry. And they're just conversations that we normally have that are just super normal.
Yeah.
But it applies to everything. It applies to how games are funded, how games are made, how well we understand what we're making, when things happen in game development, right?
Yeah.
The reasons things happen in game development. Like people are always complaining about like this DLC content was on the disc.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, part of it was probably on the disc, right? Like that just saves the download later, and like it was already in development when it went gold. So why would you not put it on the disc? That seems silly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things like that where people will say like, oh, this game came out and now this other game like 2 months later is doing the same thing. Clearly they're just copying it. It's like, no, by the time this game came out, that game was gold and going to the presses.
Yeah.
Like they didn't add that because of that game. So there's a lot of misunderstanding of how games get made. And I think a lot of that is our fault.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something we need to fix.
Yeah. Well, I can see that it's, some of it like our fault, but at the same time, like, don't you want to like preserve some of that magic? Like I like magic tricks, but if everybody knows how it's made, do you think it can take away from the experience, or are there some very specific things that should be more well known?
I don't think so. Here's the thing, like, you know, there's two ways to appreciate a magic trick, right? There's the way of appreciating a magic trick not knowing how it's done, and there's the way of appreciating a magic trick knowing how it's done.
That's true. Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that everybody should understand every part of game development, because honestly, I will sit at a game, and I know a lot about game development, right? I've been doing this for a decade. I've talked to all my heroes from my childhood, right? Like, I've talked to everybody. I've learned from like the best. I've been to like major studios. I've consulted on like large projects. I've seen everything, and I'll still like I'll boot up like, I don't know, just like I was playing Ace Combat, right? And the way the clouds work in that game is so phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I was like, how did they do that?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how is the feel? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
So I'm continuously still overwhelmed by a lot of games, and like it's not like the magic is gone.
That's true.
It's just in a different place now.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that everybody should understand perfectly how games get made, but if you, what I do think is if you're going to argue about how games are made, then you should probably be aware of how games get made.
Right. I think that's a good comment for pretty much anything said on the internet. Like if you're going to argue about it, you should know how it works.
Yeah. And I think we just created the misconception that a lot of people do know how it works.
Yeah.
Well, they don't. Like most people in the games industry don't know how it works.
No. That's
because
interesting,
it's just it's magic.
Yeah. I like a comment you made, like when you were playing Ace Combat, that the clouds, like I probably wouldn't have noticed, because I'm not sure if you've seen this. There was a thing on about Ace Combat where they used to like just a 2D picture of a dog. And
the JPEG dog?
Yeah. And like that is the stuff like we as Twitter people like flock onto, like, look at that silly dog. But at least that was pretty fair. Like it's a great game, but look at this silly dog, right?
Yeah.
And then I hear you talking like I have no idea how these clouds work, and I think that is a lot more people should be appreciated of that aspect of a game.
I mean, I love the dog as well.
Yeah.
Like it's just fascinating. Like a lot of game development is also just sort of shortcuts.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think if that wasn't a discussion, 70% of people would have never noticed.
Yeah.
Right? It's just because it's Twitter and like it's really funny to have a JPEG dog in a game. Like of course everybody's going to be talking about that, but games are full of funny stuff. Like they're full of like strange little shortcuts or like ways to save time or. I just, you know what, about the dog, I just want to know what the meeting was in which they went like,
yeah, we'll get away with it, yeah.
We'll do the dog.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. And then so did they go around the office and like somebody just went like, does anybody know how to make a dog? You? Only airplanes? Okay, anybody? Dogs? Humans? No? No dogs? No, nobody? Okay. Does anybody have a photo of a dog?
Yeah, that must have been...
Like... What happened?
Yeah.
Like, and this is also like just the fun thing about having seen behind the curtain is you can sort of imagine a lot of these meetings happening, and you can see the meetings behind things that went well and the meetings behind things that went poorly. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've come to appreciate about the games industry is that almost every bad game has a good team behind it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's always a little disheartening because I understand that people are critical of their entertainment and that they, especially if they've paid for it, they deserve a working product.
Yeah.
On the other hand, obviously I know for a lot of games that are panned or are bad, that there's just good people working on it.
Yeah.
It kind of sucks. Yeah. It's fair enough, but.
Yeah, no, I think everybody should at least dabble in trying to make one level of a game, because I was the guy that was like, it's 2018, why does my sword still clip through my cape? Like, how have they still not figured it out? And I tried to make a level, and my character kept falling through the floor because there was one pixel off. I was like, okay, I am never, ever going to complain about clipping through a cape anymore, because it is hard.
Do you remember the first trailer of Watch Dogs?
Yeah.
One of the moments that stunned the entire games industry is the main character in that game, Aiden Pierce. At one point, he's walking, and he puts his hands in his coat jacket, in his coat pocket, and I swear the entire games industry lost its shit.
Yeah,
because we were all watching that, and we were like, how did they just dynamically deform this cloth? Like, how is this possible? Yeah. And my Twitter just exploded, and I was just yelling at people like, "Did you see that?" And everybody's like, "Oh yeah, no." And like nobody, like in the outside, everybody was talking about the light, and the light was pretty good, but it was not like phenomenal. And they were talking about the water, and which was good, but it was not phenomenal. But like there's like one moment of like cloth deformation.
Yeah.
We all lost our shit. Like everybody was just like, "Are you like what?
Yeah,
what magicians? Like, what new technology do they have that we have never seen? Yeah, how do we get?"
It's so funny because you mentioned water, because that's how I mostly judge all of my games until I actually like learn a little bit about it. I'm like, wow, that water looks good. Like this must be a great game because the water looks good. And then the more you know, the more you see. Like you're still a big player. Does it? add to the experience, or does it take you out of the experience? Like I can imagine you playing a big narrative game, and then you're just looking at the cloth deformations or the cloud action. Can you shut that off still?
I can't shut it off. No, I lost that ability. It's weird because I've never really been. So when I think of like a gamer, I think of somebody who can get lost in these worlds, right? I don't. Mm-hmm. I get lost in like the achievement of those worlds, right? Like that world existing. That's the part that fascinates me. And I've been that way since I was 6, right? Since I played that very first game with the gorillas throwing bananas and realizing that I could change a word. Yeah. Every game I've played, I've tried to break. Yeah. I've tried to like change words. I've tried to rename files. I've tried to edit my save games. I've tried to like use hex editors. I've tried to like decompile. I've started to learn how to program myself. Like I've never played a game without wondering how it was made. Yeah. So for me, that's just how games are. Yeah. But for me, that's fascinating. Yeah. Like, I love that. I love playing a game. I'm playing Kingdom Hearts now. Yeah. And the first time Donald and Goofy show up, I'm just like, wow, the rights negotiations for this must have been hell, right? And I was just like, but it's awesome. Like, it worked. Look at how cool this is. How awesome must it be to work on something like that?
That is funny. That is funny.
And then, or Destiny. You play Destiny, right? Like, you know what blows my mind about Destiny?
No.
That you can swap equipment during load. Yeah. So while the game is loading, you can pull up the menu and swap out your gear. And then Anthem is coming out. Yeah. A lot of people are complaining about not being able to swap gear on the fly. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, obviously. Like, that's...
Yeah, it's a thing
It's a video game. Yeah. You can't do it during load. Yeah. And I'm like, wait, Destiny did that. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. But then I hope that kind of contextualizes for a lot of players. Like, wow, okay, this thing in Destiny... is really cool. Yeah. And really hard. What they pulled off is incredible. Yeah. Because you shouldn't be able to do that during load. Yeah. Like that's rough.
Yeah. And that just blows my mind because I'm just a player and I'm like, I can do this because the load times are long and but like not having a clue that while I'm complaining and switching my gear because the load times are long, that is a huge deal. That game developers are like, what?
Yep. No, and then my favorite thing is when people are like, oh, it takes so long to swap an item in Destiny. I'm like, you're doing it during load. Yeah. Like, you should not be able to interact with the simulation at all, let alone do something in a menu that receives data from a server and then update your status from a server and then stream that data, update the character model, put the new items there while the game is loading. Yeah. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. And I can even do it from my phone while I'm...
You could, and then the game updates.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty impressive, actually. But again, I would have never given that a second thought unless someone brings up. So that's why I think it's so cool to have that conference that you can check that out, because I think education is going to be a huge thing, because not everybody has played around with hex editors. My only experience with that was in a game called Asheron's Call.
Oh, that was a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hex edited my game for 2 things. One, so I could log in with 2 accounts at the same time, so I could trade items between 2 accounts. And you could hex edit it so you could cast spells for others on yourself, because the other economy was a stronger spell than yourself was. Yeah. So you could, like... That's, I guess it's game development in a way. You were just breaking the game. But I think, like I said... having that little extra knowledge, I think, would add to your appreciation, at least, of things.
I think so.
Because a lot of it's easy to complain, right? If you don't know what you're talking about.
And honestly, it's fair to complain, right? Like it's useful for us when people complain. Yeah. What always gets a little less fun is when people blame us. Yeah. For things that are technically incredible, like the slow swap times in Destiny. Yeah. It's like they didn't need to do that. No, right? They could have made loading like that. They could have made swapping items like this if they just didn't do it during load. Yeah, but they wanted to give the ability to do that during load, which means that it'll be a little slower because in the background, this game is loading like 100 different things at once, like music, assets, art, sounds, everything. So it's often with things like that make me a little sad, where I see a thing and also like the way people think that studios are super competitive, right? Like there's a photo on my Twitter from like a week ago of me at DICE with Phil Spencer and Jade Reynolds and Corey Barlog, and like Phil and Corey technically are completely opposite sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Like Phil is Xbox, Corey is PlayStation. Phil just walked over and congratulated Corey because he won every award at DICE, right? Like him and the team for God of War. The games industry really likes each other. Like, there's not a lot of us. There's maybe like what 100,000 game developers worldwide working on like a professional level. We like each other. Like it's kind of an awesome industry. And the same thing with like press. Like, people seem to think that the press hates us and we hate the press, but in general we really respect the press. Like, they often get a lot of things right. Like, there's nothing cooler than reading a semi-critical review of your game that just kind of like nails the things you were trying to do, but also exactly sees where you messed up. Right? Like when a review goes like, oh, they did all this right, but like here I kind of feel like the game isn't working quite well, and you're like, yes. Also, shit, there goes my Metacritic, but also, you nailed it. That was exactly what we were trying to do. Fuck.
Well, some people appreciate it. Some people at Xbox today don't. Those kind of not to steer the pot here, but
wow, that was a weird tweet today. But I hate it when that happens.
It happens. I guess it must be hard too. Like, not everybody can keep their cool, and like, you appreciate it, but some people might just like really get upset about that kind of stuff.
I mean, I think most developers, one of the skills that you get really good at as a developer is dealing with feedback. Right? Because you have to. Like, you get really good at listening to people complain and figuring out what they're actually trying to say. Because a lot of people on Twitter will try and offer solutions, and that's useless because they're not game developers, right? So they'll say like, oh, this boss has too much health. But maybe they mean like, my level is too low for this boss, or I don't have ammo, or the health that I have versus the health that the boss have, or maybe like the ads are unfair, or there's like a balancing issue with this particular. Like, you don't know. Like, so you just see the complaints, and you get really good at like figuring out. Okay. I think that's true for developers. I don't think that's necessarily true for execs, right? Like, people that are executives at companies, which is what happened today when Ibarra was upset about an Anthem review. Like, as developers, I think the Anthem theme must have gone like, oh, if a reviewer missed that, we really need to fix, because the reviewer missed the combo system in the game, right? If I, as a developer, would read that, I'd be like, all right, somebody get on that. We need to fix it. Right? This is super good feedback. We need to put that more clearly, because if a reviewer misses it, we still have... Like, it'll launch without that patch, but we can have that fixed in like 2 weeks. Right? So you go and fix it. Like, this is awesome feedback. Like, now in 2 weeks, when people start playing the game, you can be like, oh, okay, we should fix it.
Combo.
Chances are they already caught it in testing, and that patch is out already, which is what happened today. I think that patch came out like now. So that means that 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, they were aware of this problem. They fixed it. And then to have some executive at Microsoft be like, the reviewer is whining. No, shut the fuck up. Like, this is not, get out of here. Like, let the developers do the development. You do your executive stuff, which is difficult work and important and like all that. But like, come on, like, don't call a reviewer a whiner. Like, you're an executive, for God's sake. If you're a random on Twitter yelling at a reviewer, sure. Right? Still not my favorite. But if you're like a powerful person at Xbox yelling at a reviewer for giving a bad score for a game that is on Xbox, that's a no. That's a no for me. That's get out of here.
Well, maybe maybe he's having a rough day. You never know. Like, you put it out there and the whole world falls over it. But it did come off a little odd. But overall, I mean, what can you do if you're I think he learned his lesson today.
I hope so. I think as industry, we have to keep each other accountable, which is something I think we're relatively good at. Like, if one of us fucks up, we tend to be very honest about that, because again, like, we know how to deal with feedback.
But I love getting that behind the scenes. And for me, it's the payoff of doing whatever it is that I do, because I still can put myself into a really proper box on what my role is in here. but it has definitely enhanced my my appreciation, my experiences, and that is also one of my favorite things last year, Rami, is when you, as someone who knows all this stuff, I'm not sure if you made your mom play video games or how that happened. But that was such a pleasure to read. And if you do not know that, I think you can still find the hashtags. She started with Persona 5, or was it Final Fantasy 15?
Final Fantasy
15. How did that happen? Because I don't think I can get my mom to pick up a controller and play.
So my mom is 60-ish, right? And she's been very supportive of my career in games. And one day I got home from this trip, right? And I just kind of off the cuff told her, like, oh yeah, I was visiting Phil. And she's like, which Phil? And I'm like, Tibetowski. And she's like, oh cool, how's Octodad doing? And I'm like, wait, what? And she's like, how's Octodad? That's this game, right? And I'm like, how do you know that? And she's like, oh, I must have read it on your Facebook. I'm like, I don't think that's on, like, are you reading games news? And my mom's like, yes, I am. I'm like, what are you reading? And she just pulls out this list. Yeah. That's like more games news than I read, right? Like I have an app on my phone that like aggregates all the games news sites, so I can quickly scroll through it each morning. She was reading everything. She was reading everything from like Rock Paper Shotgun to GamesIndustry.biz to like Kotaku, Polygon, IGN, GameSpot. Like she was reading everything, and I'm like, why are you reading all this stuff? And she's like, well, just so that when you come home, you don't have to explain everything and we can just talk about it. And I'm like,
so cute, though.
It's so adorable. Yeah. So my mom was reading games news. And I was like, have you ever played a video game? And she's like, oh, no. I'm like, well, do you want to play a video game? She's like, it seems hard. And I'm like, well, how about we try? Yeah. I'll get you a game that I think you'll like. Mm-hmm. And then we'll just run through it together. And if you don't like it, we'll just stop. Yeah. So her mom said, okay. And I know the one movie my mom really loved was Lord of the Rings. Yeah. So I started looking for a game that was, the basic story had to be a bunch of boys fight God. Yeah. Right. And eventually, after some searching, I had played Final Fantasy 15 earlier that year. I realized like Final Fantasy 15 is perfect because the mechanics are sort of accessible. You don't have to like get to exactly the right place to attack because Noctis, just your main character Noctis, just sort of auto attacks. Yeah. If you hold the attack button, you don't have to like precisely dodge because Noctis will dodge if you hold the dodge button. There's a bunch of mechanics there, but they're not really important. Yeah. So I got a Final Fantasy 15, and my God, using a controller is hard. Yeah. Like I've been doing it all my life, so I'm just like, okay, like give me a dual stick, and I can like there's a dual stick right here. Like I could play games this way, right? Yeah. Like I'm fine if you
play like this over the head.
Yeah, I can do this. This is fine. Like I've played forever. Like okay, walk forward, turn right, like press X, shoot the trigger. Like it's fine. Like I've done this all my life. For her doing this, like moving the left stick forward, takes all of her brain capacity. Yeah. Right? Because it's complicated because you press that forward and now stuff is happening on the screen, which to us is very reasonable. Like your character is moving, but she's not sure what she's controlling. Yeah. So for the first few weeks, it was just me sitting there telling her like, oh no, you're good. Okay, try moving the left stick forward, and then when you get to the right place, move the right stick to the right to rotate your character. Yeah. And there would be amazing stuff. Like the camera would turn, you know, when your character is close to a wall and you turn your camera into the wall, how it will sort of like stick against the wall and your character will become transparent. Yeah. My mom would panic because her character was gone. Yeah. She'd be like, oh, I'm gone. Like, where did I go? And I'm like, no, you're right. So
camera's inside you.
Yeah, for weeks we did that. And then we got to like actual game. And it was just incredible because when we play games, we play them with sort of an understanding of reality that is based in games. Yeah. So when we come across a cracked wall in a dungeon, we go blow it up because there's treasure behind it, obviously. When my mom sees a cracked dungeon wall, she goes, oh, we should get out of here because that looks like things might collapse. And if so, like you say, like you should blow it up. She's like, no,
OSHA's gonna come down on us.
Yeah, like we're gonna die. Like I'm not gonna blow that. And it was amazing because she brought the worldview of a 60-year-old human that has never played a video game. She didn't bring all this game logic in there.
No.
She there was this amazing moment early on when she messaged me that she'd met this like shady person in the game and that she'd run away, and this person was like wearing all black and like she met him at this place called Alden Key, and I'm like, oh, she met Arden, right? Like the sort of like pseudo antagonist of Final Fantasy 15. And it turns out she'd met a shopkeeper.
Yeah.
Because she ran into the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper went like, hey, you want to buy weapons? And her mom was like, hell no, I'm out of here. Like, it's just some random stranger on the street going like, hey, you want to buy some swords and guns? And my mom's like, no, absolutely not. I want to get out of here. Which is super fair when you think about it. So a lot of that, she played it and she loved it. Yeah. She loved the game. She loved the world. She loved the characters. And she's just like, this entire new world just opened. But at the same time, you know, like she was playing the game very much like somebody from outside a video game. So one of my favorite things is for all of Final Fantasy 15, she did not a single side quest.
Yeah.
Because she's the crown prince of the country of Insomnia.
Yeah.
And no, she's not going to pick up onions. And no, she's not going to bring your package. And no, she's not going to take photos for you. Yeah. There's a world to save. There's no time for yellow chickens.
Yeah.
I'm on a mission.
Yeah.
So then for the second game, after she finished 15, after what, like 6 months?
Yeah.
We got her Dragon Age Inquisition.
Okay.
Because in that game, you have to do the side quests.
Yeah.
Like, it makes narrative sense. You're building resistance, so you help people with whatever you can.
Yeah.
So my mom 100%ed Dragon Age Inquisition.
It's nuts.
Because she didn't want to go to the last boss fight without having as much support as possible. Because the last boss fight is like a super demon, and she's just like human lady.
Yeah.
So she wanted all the support. So she pretty much like 100%ed the entire game, including like one of the DLCs. And then got to the last boss fight and just like wrecked him.
Yeah.
She just like destroyed Corypheus. And I asked her later, like, how was the boss fight? Because I remember the super epic, like, big boss fight. And she's like, yeah, it was over in like 20 seconds. I'm like, wait, what? What? And she's like,
one shot.
Yeah, like I attacked like a bunch of times and he teleported and I ran after him and he teleported again. And apparently she did so much damage in so little time that he like skipped 2 phases or something. And I'm like, oh.
Look at your mom, one phasing bosses.
Yeah. So after that, I realized she was doing the same attack over and over. So we got a Persona 5 because it's a little bit more strategic. It's turn-based. So that was her first turn-based game. And at that point, she was doing things like walking the character towards the camera.
Yeah.
And at the start, she wouldn't do that because she couldn't see what was there.
Yeah.
Right, so she would walk back. She would walk forwards, but then if she wanted to turn around, she would turn around the camera.
Yeah.
So that she could see where she's walking, and it wouldn't save in her head that she came from a place that would be the same.
Yeah.
By the time Persona 5 came around, she was walking backwards towards the camera and like rotating the camera while she was walking. After that, she played God of War.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my favorite tweeting series, I think. Yeah.
It was really good. It was by that time she was getting pretty used to controls.
Yeah.
My mom wanted to be an archaeologist when she was younger.
Yeah.
I grew up between all of these books about like Egyptian and Roman and Greek history, but never Nordic history.
Yeah.
Like never the Norse history. So I told her that there was this game about Norse history.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, I'd play it," but I'm not. And I'm like, "No, it's violent, though.
Yeah.
Like these games are violent." And she's like, "Well, can we check?"
Yeah.
And if it's too much, we'll just not play it. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, you're mostly fighting monsters. My mom doesn't like violence against humans in games, but okay, monsters, fair. So we just like went and she did like the first boss fight where you like completely like cleave this giant ogre being in two and like put an axe in his eyeball and like smash his face with a rock. She just kind of looked at it and she's like, so this Kratos man, he's a god, right? I'm like, yeah. She's like, the gods were kind of jerks. I'm like, yeah. She's like, I think I can handle this.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So yeah, she played God of War and just adored it, like the music and the world and the characters and everything. And by this point, the games industry had kind of taken notice.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever she plays a game, she gets like messages from the developers, and for Final Fantasy 15, the voice actor of Noctis sent her like a little voice clip, and for God of War, the developers sent her a video of Mimir from the game, like talking to her, and
that's so cool.
So people are like really supporting her run into games. She's currently playing Destiny 2.
Oh, cool. We should strike up.
Yeah, she's a warlock.
Yeah,
she's at 500 light.
Yeah.
And she's we're trying to get a raid ready to do Leviathan.
Okay.
Which is really rough because it's her first person game.
Yeah.
But we're trying to get her to a point where she can participate in a raid to like show her the last thing she's missing from Destiny. She's done strikes. She's done PvP. She loves Mayhem.
Yeah, Mayhem is the best.
Which is just a mode where all the abilities are set to like 1,000,000 and you get supers all the time and ultimates and like heavy weapons and everything. She loves that one because she can get kills in it. It's the only mode she has ever got PvP kills in.
Yeah.
So the only thing that's missing is a raid. Yeah. So I'm trying to get a crew together that'll be patient with her and like respect that experience. And she loves Beat Saber.
Oh yeah, I've heard you talk about Beat Saber still. That's a whole new level to.
That's VR.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mom versus VR.
Yeah.
My mom really liked. So she used to have an Xbox before with just like Connect Adventures, which was a game that she would play just as like a little workout, right? And then the Connect kind of went out of fashion, and there was not new games for it. So she's been looking for sort of an active game. So I introduced Beat Saber to her one time, and she didn't want to play it, right? Like you have to like cut things with PlayStation Move controllers, and it's in VR, so you're wearing this ridiculous helmet. And me and my sister convinced her to try it once, and she did. And she was like, we played it on easy, and she was like, "Oh, this is good." And then I've been playing this game for months, so I'm playing on like expert and like at fast and like. And she was just watching it, and she's like, "This is impossible." I was visiting her last week.
Yeah.
She's playing on hard, on faster, and she's like wrecking it. She's like getting like full combos, like getting like 1 or 2 misses in like a 400, 500, 600 note song. I was just watching this. I'm like, you realize the first time you watched me play, that's what you're playing now. And she's like, "Oh, wow,
that's
I didn't notice."
Does it do something to your developer brain when you get someone with that completely blank slate?
Yeah, you learn so much. I've learned so much from watching my mom play video games, like about the things we take for granted, about the language that we use. Like the cracked wall is language. Yeah. It's a word. Yeah. Like it's like a word in a language. Like you're saying, if you have the right resource, a bomb, put that here, and you will get a reward. Yeah, that's literally what it is. Like it's like a word that says all these things, and we agree on that, right? Like a little green box is an item or a health kit, right? Like a red barrel is don't stand near this. Yeah. Like we have all these shortcuts that we just know. Yeah, and they're everywhere. There's like the right trigger is shoot. Yeah. Why is the right trigger shoot? Like there's no. I mean, I know why. It's because it feels like a trigger, but there's all these rules about games that we just kind of inherently know. She doesn't. Yeah. Right? A shopkeeper is not a human. It's an abstract. It's a shop. Yeah. Right? We understand that. To her, it's a scary dude trying to sell her guns, which I would run away from as well. Yeah. Watching that taught me a lot about sort of like where this language exists. Like where is video game literacy? Yeah. Like where is it not, and how can we work better with that, and how can we avoid issues with that? So it's been fascinating. It's so cool. Yeah. It's so cool. I can't. She's actually asked for a few games in particular. Yeah. For the next games, she really wants to play Nier Automata.
Oh boy.
Right. Yeah. I told her that might have to wait a little because that game is basically built around video game literacy. Yeah. Like the entire point of it is that it's a game about video games. Yeah. And she really wants to play Assassin's Creed because the archaeologist in her really wants to see these ancient worlds. But I told her there's a lot of violence against humans in that, so she's not quite sure.
Yeah, that's probably. When my wife watched me play it, she's like, "Jesus!" I'm like, what are you doing? But that's I just love this. Where like I enjoyed those tweets so much, and I see it now myself when I play with my daughter who's 4. She's just slightly still too young because she can move. Like we play Mario together, she can move Mario around, but she can't stop. So when she has to go under a box and jump, that doesn't work because she knows I have to press a thing to make the thing happen. But stopping is a concept she just doesn't get yet. So now I let her win in Smash, which is more funnier. I just jump off the cliff like 7 times and then I beat her up a little bit. But I can imagine like you keep learning from the most unexpected resources, basically. So like we have talked about a lot of things. When you take a look back at you just getting into university for game development, not knowing what your life is going to be, do you think that Rami would be like mind blown that you got to be late with lunch with the king and queen of the Netherlands because you stayed up? There's been so much going on for you. Like, do you ever look back and think you would be impressed with yourself?
I'm not even impressed. I'm shocked. Right. Like, I mean, obviously, like I'm. If you told like Rami 10 years ago that this is where Rami now would be. 10 years ago is about a year and a half before the founding of Vlambeer. Right. I wouldn't. This is ridiculous, right? Like it's absurd. This community has given me so much, and it's been so good to me, and it's been so supportive of this ridiculous concept of helping people that you've never met, that you've never seen. But also, like, when things were rough for me, like, it's been supportive, right? Like, when Ridiculous Fishing got cloned and I was, like, having a burnout, like, the entire games industry just sort of, like, stood up as an industry and went, like, okay, you know what? Stealing somebody else's game is messed up. And the developers of the game that got stolen, they need our support. And they were just there. Like, we didn't have to ask for that. People just showed up. And I think realizing now that as a game developer, like I'm not going to say like I'm one of the most visible game developers in the world, right? Like, because compared to like a Cliff Bleszinski or a John Romero or a Brenda Romero or Jade Reynolds or whatever, I'm small. But as a visible developer that actively engages, that has the freedom to speak about whatever he wants, because I don't have a boss that can fire me, and there's no social media guidelines at Vlambeer. I am my own HR. So if people have complaints about my Twitter, they can email me.
I think I've seen you tweet that once or twice too.
Well, because I actually have an email address that is hr@vlambeer.com. And I direct people with complaints there, and then I laugh at the complaints. Because it's like, Rami said a thing about gamers, and I'm like, yes, that is. I will say things about gamers. I will also say things about game developers and press. I will just say what I think. That's the point of being independent. But no, the amount of visibility that I have, and the amount of respect that I've gotten, and the amount of support that I've received, I don't even know what I wanted to be in the games industry. Like, I wanted to be a programmer. I would have happily gone and worked at a studio, right? This, though, I get to, like, help chart the future of this industry in quite significant ways sometimes. Like, I'm at the table, like, negotiating for, like, indie contracts for, like, major platforms, right? Like, I'm being asked for my opinions on, like, big games, like, I help indies everywhere around. Like, I didn't expect this. Like, I didn't expect to be at a dinner with like 3 of my favorite developers around the world. Like, I didn't expect to have dinner in Barcelona with Mark Cerny, who developed the architecture for the PlayStation 4, and Amy Hennig, who is, one of the most incredible designers in the world. Like, I didn't expect to meet all of my heroes. I didn't expect to meet like Warren Spector and like be on like talking bases with him, or like John Romero and like, or Brenda Romero. Both of them are incredible. And like all of these heroes, like most of the heroes I've met that I have in the games industry are better people in real life than they seem to be in the way I thought they would be, right? Like they're all such inspiring, kind people that came from such a hard industry.
Yeah.
So now I just want to protect that.
Yeah.
Like, and I've been given opportunity to do that. And what? Like, come on! Like, I just want to type words into my computer, and then video games happen.
Yeah.
And now I don't only get to do that, but I have a number of award-winning. I made the Game of the Year for Apple iPhone and iPad of 2013, according to Apple.
Yeah.
You make the iPhone and the iPad.
Yeah.
Right. Ridiculous Fishing with JW and Zach Gage and Greg Woolwand and Eirik Surke. Like, what? And I get to like play games early. I get to like see betas. I get to like give feedback on those games. I get to like talk to every person that I've appreciated. I get to see the next generation of game development.
Yeah.
I get to share all that with the world. I get to see what's happening. I get to meet the people. Like, come on.
Yeah.
If you told me 10 years ago that this is where things were going, I'd say like, wake up.
Yeah.
Like, this is not like your games industry is awesome, but that's not what your life is going to be, right? Like your life's going to be, you're going to program games. You're going to do it for a studio, and and you know what? That will be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. Like I would love that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is just, I think it fits who I am. Like I want to solve problems. I'm really bad at sitting there and seeing a thing that I think is unfair or not right, and then just letting it be.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot to love about the games industry, and there's a lot to fix.
Yeah.
And as long as there's things to fix, let's keep fixing them. Right? Like, I don't know. Like on a very high philosophical level, I like to think that games are play.
Yeah.
Right? They're playfulness. They are a way for us to play, and play is not that new. Like video games are new, but play is one of the oldest things that people do. And when you think about it, it's in our DNA. And that sounds over the top, but when you really think about it, when we were like just starting out as a species, the people that would hit the animals they were hunting with their spears or whatever weapons they were using were the people that were just messing around with them.
Yeah.
They would just aim at a tree until they would always hit the tree. And maybe they did like little competitions, maybe not. But like, the people that threw that spear at that tree would kill the hunt, would hunt.
Yeah.
And the people that would climb trees, when a predator would show up, they would be the first ones to be safe.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need to be the fastest. You just not have to be the slowest.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, this playfulness is in our DNA. It's just a way we understand the universe. It's how we learn. It's how we practice. It's how we try things that are dangerous in a safe way. And I like to think of games as like the newest version of that torch. Like we have like the most badass torch. It's like sort of a sci-fi torch with like VR goggles and like cables and like electronics and computers. And we have this torch now. And I just want to make sure, I'm going to be what? Like, if I get lucky and I have a healthy and happy life, like I'll be like 80, 90 years old, at some point. I really want to know what that torch looks like. Yeah. But I also want to know that when we hand it over, like when my generation of game developers hands it over, I want to make sure that we can say like we handled it well.
Yeah.
Right. This oldest torch in like human history, the torch of play. Yeah. Like we treated it with respect and we understood its power, and we're passing it on now to you. And you do with it what you see fit, right? And I think this is all super weird for somebody that's 30 years old to think, but I guess I kind of have to. I think we're doing a good job as an industry, right? Like we're fucking up a lot, but we're also working so hard to get things right. Like, we're working so hard to educate our audiences, to be more respectful, to be more fair, to be more honest, to be more open, to be more transparent. People are live streaming their development and giving people like real insight. We're working closer with our communities than ever before. Twitch has democratized a lot of stuff. Like, reviews are more in depth than ever. Like, the way we do scoring is, more considerate. We think of games as like a real cultural artifact. They're in museums. Like, we're fucking working at this so hard, and it makes me so proud. Yeah. Right? I'm so proud of this industry and the people I work with. I'm so proud to be standing with them and next to them. I couldn't have dreamt this.
No. Well, I think the industry is lucky to have you. We've been going back and forth for a bit. We've met, but you are such an approachable person. Like, if I go to your website, I feel like anyone could reach out to you. And I think having a champion like that in the industry, not just for games, because I know you do a whole lot of stuff around this too. I know you work with Able Gamers and all those charities as well. I like what you said. I think it is in good hands, especially when we have people like you in the industry trying to push the medium further and being vocal about it, because it's not a skill everybody has, right? Like you said, you started with wanting to put words in a computer and making games happen, and now I think you're often called upon as like a consultant, or people look up to you to fix the problems that maybe they can't fix, and then you just organize this whole new thing that's going to open doors for people that would never have access to that kind of knowledge. So thank you for everything you do. I think.
Thanks for kind words. Like, the Dutch part of me wants to be like, oh no, come on. I think the way I like to think of myself is as a facilitator, right? I help catalyze things that the industry already wants. Yeah. So one of the things that's really hard is, as the most visible person in a lot of initiatives I do, a lot of people think of them as my thing. But like, Presskit happened because of Phil Tibetowski from the Mom Story. Yeah. Because he just looked at it and he went like, this is awesome, can I use it? And I'm like, yeah, actually, I should just make this public, right? And the Game Dev World happened because me and Sarah Almale, who's the co-founder of it, were talking about what like barriers are there in the games industry that nobody is looking at. Yeah. And so a lot of the things I do are not mine. I think I am just, what you say, like, people reach out to me with their issues. And because I see all those issues, I can also say, like, okay, this issue is very common. Yeah. Let's go fix it. Yeah. So I think a lot of what I do is not me, it's the trust of the industry in me. Yeah. And I just try and make things happen. Yeah, but comes that Dutch aspect for you, because you still make it happen. You're still I try that funnel of all the goodness that people want put in the world, and they might not have a channel for, or the know-how. So I think everybody should appreciate what you do, and if you say mean things about gamers, you can just go to HR at Vlambeer. I love gamers. I don't know where that always comes from. Because, like, honestly, as a game developer, the one thing you love more than anything else tends to be the player. Yeah. Right? Like, we make these things for the player. Everything we do is for the player. Yeah. It's actually the best tagline in the games industry, is for the players. Yeah. It's like, it's what we do. It's literally what we do. Yeah. Because a game without a player is just a piece of software doing nothing. Yeah. So
that's I think maybe it's the Dutch directness that doesn't always translate well to North American values.
This is so true. Yeah. The first few years in the industry, I was in so much trouble all the time. Yeah. Because the Dutch are so blunt. Yeah. We're so direct. I was with this American friend who was visiting in the Netherlands, and we were visiting my mom, and they just said, like, they asked my mom, and they're like, "Don't you think it's cold in here?" And my mom just looks at them and goes like, "No." And that was it.
It's like a suggestion, right? The Dutch are like, no. I had this when I moved to Canada. Like, our humor often is very rough around the edges, very direct. So I got in trouble like all the time, and it's they're terrible jokes. But then in business, I got in trouble all the time because people would ask me, "Hey, can you do that?" Yes. And they were like, "No, we need you to do it now." I was like, "No, you asked me to do something. It goes on the bottom of my list." No, like all these little cultural things.
Yeah.
So what I did, I got like a converter for like our power plugs. We have the round ones, and in the US they have the flat ones.
Yeah.
And I put it on my desk as a reminder that I always have to convert like North American language to Dutch language. And it helped me out a little bit. I still get in trouble every now and then.
Well, there's a lot of language like that. There's also like business stuff, which is really weird. Because somebody asks you, "Can you do this?" And you say yes. That's bad.
Yeah.
What you're supposed to do is you're gonna need to. If somebody says like, "Can you do this?" You have to say like, "Ooh, that'll be tough."
Yeah.
I'll look into it and I'll get back to you. And then like in a week, you email them and go like, "We can do it. This will be the cost."
Yeah.
It's a pretty complicated project, but like if you just go with like yes, then the other person's gonna be like, "Oh, apparently it's not that big of a deal."
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
those are the things you'll learn.
There's so much translation between like just being the Dutch blunt, like, "Can you do this?" "Yes, I can."
Yeah.
To like American and then American business and then
No, man, the amount of time I got in trouble for someone asked me to do something, I did the thing, and then not tell them I did it. Like, you asked me to do it, I did it. That's the end of that conversation. But we could probably fill a whole podcast on Dutch.
Yeah, it's really funny. The Dutch are one of my favorite. They're one of my favorite people because they're both very blunt, very humble, but also very prideful.
Yeah,
like it's really odd. They're humbly prideful.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix that we have.
Yeah,
but no, I really enjoyed talking to you. I mean, and for me, like if you would have asked me 3 years ago, like, do you think you're gonna shoot the shit with Rami on a podcast that you haven't made yet? I would have not believed it either. So thank you for coming on. Is there anything you want to plug, promote, something that's coming on? I always end with podcast and shill, where people can throw out some lines.
If people want to follow me, I'm available on Twitter at @THA_Rami. If you want to follow my studio, it's Vlambeer. We are currently working on a new game called Ultra Bugs, which is in development, and we'll have announcements on its release date somewhere in the nearby future. If you're interested in the work I do in the games industry, my current project is called GameDev.world. It's a online live-streamed free games conference in 8 different languages, including English. But also our speakers will be from all over the world. So, the developers from all over the world will be talking about how they make games, why they make games, and the tricks they've learned. If you have any interest in game development at all, even if just as an enthusiast, even if you don't want to make games, but you just want to know how the people behind it think or work, it's free. You can sign up at GameDev.world. If you're interested, please do. It genuinely helps me throw this event to be able to show numbers to our sponsors. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested, please do sign up. I think that's shilling enough, isn't it?
Yeah, that's plenty of shill. That's plenty of shill right there. But it's good. Well, thank you so much again. And if you're listening to this, I am the Hashtagonist, but you already found the podcast, but you can also find me on Twitter under the same handle. So this is my show. I try to do this every week with interesting guests from the gaming industry and sometimes other industries as well. So thank you for tuning in, and hopefully we'll see each other again next week.